Good afternoon, everyone, and a big warm welcome to today's webinar. I am delighted to be joined by friends of the TUC from Unity Trust Bank. I will introduce them in a second. I just want to let a few more people join us here in the Zoom room before we get going properly. I'll give it 30 seconds or so just for the Zoom room to fill up, and then we'll take it from there. In the meantime, please do feel free to say hi in the chat panel. We always like to hear where you're from, your union, your workplace, if you'd like to share that as well. So, hi everyone who's just joined us. We've had a few more come in the last 20 seconds or so. You're all very welcome. If this is your first TUC webinar, big warm welcome. If you are a returnee, big welcome back. I'll start with a bit of housekeeping while the Zoom room still fills up. So I'm Anna from the TUC. Many of you would have met me before. And I'm joined today by Matt McLeod from Unity Trust Bank, from Richard Rose, also from Unity Trust Bank. And I'll go into a bit more about what they're responsible for soon. And we've also got Martin Barrett on as well here. We are obviously, as we're joined by people from Unity Trust, we're going to be talking today about fraud and how you can protect yourself against fraud. First of all, if you want to follow along with live captions, below the video screen at the bottom of the screen here, there is a button that says show live closed captions. Click that if you want to follow along with those. We are, of course, recording today's webinar. So if you miss anything, or you've got to leave, or you want to share this with colleagues, we will send you a link to the recording later today or first thing tomorrow. And also any links to resources that we might mention during today's session. We've kept some time after the presentations from Matt and Richard to take questions from you all. So again, at the bottom of the video screen, there's a Q&A button. Please do post your questions there for Matt and Richard, and we will get to those after we've heard from them about the subject of the day. And of course, it's great to see so many of you already posting in the chat. So this is a joint webinar with Unity Trust Bank. It's actually the second one we've done. We did one a few months back about some of the key processes that you might do if you are an account holder with Unity Trust, if you are a signatory, if it's something in your branch where you bank with them. So we'll make sure that we send you the link to that if you missed it, if you want to catch up. And as I said, today we're going to be talking about fraud prevention, especially in your role as maybe the branch treasurer or financial officer. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that fraud is something we could all have happen to us. Have you ever opened an email with a big attachment or clicked on a link that you weren't sure about? Now, I certainly have. So I'm going to learn as much today as I'm sure all of you are from our speakers. And I also wanted to acknowledge that if this is something that's happened to you, it can be really upsetting and it can be quite triggering. So we want to acknowledge in advance that there may be people watching this has happened to, and we're here to, give you information and try and be as supportive as we can about the issues concerned. So almost enough for me for now. I'm going to introduce you first to Matt McLeod, who is the head of economic crime at Unity Trust Bank. And also then after that, you'll be hearing from Richard Rose, the union relationship manager. So first of all, Matt, over to you to tell us about fraud.
Thanks, Anna. Really appreciated. Afternoon all. My name's Matt McLeod, Head of Economic Crime for Unity Trust Bank. And what does my role entail? My role is quite simply to protect organisations just like yourselves from fraud and financial crime, and to help you understand how criminals operate so you can stay one step ahead. Next slide, please. So we start with the basics. What is fraud? Fraud is where someone deceives an organisation to obtain money, data, or their assets. And who commits them? It can be external criminals, known as fraudsters or organised crime gangs. Or it could also be internal individuals, those people that we work with, whether that's employees, volunteers, contractors, etc. Why are organisations like yours targeted? Well, you manage large member funds, you have access to bank accounts and sensitive data. You often rely on trust-based processes in order to operate, and you're trusted organisations that fraudsters can look to impersonate relatively easily. You make regular payments, payments in, payments out, and high staff turnovers in some unions make you susceptible to fraud as well. Next slide, please. We can depict fraud by something called the fraud triangle, and it's a really simple way of us trying to have a visual view as to what fraud is and how it happens and what enables fraudsters to achieve their end goal. And the fraud triangle outlines three key elements that make fraud more likely. The first one being rationalisation for those as an individual. And that can be things like, I deserve this, I'll put the money back, the organisation won't miss it, etc. So it's giving them the rationalisation as to why they would look to do something. Opportunity. An opportunity very much centres around things like weak controls, poor verification, single person authorities, giving these fraudsters the ability to be able to commit fraud easily is one of their biggest enablers. And that's very much what we're going to talk about today. And finally, pressure. And pressure can be centered around things like debt, financial stress, lifestyle pressures. And that can be both personally to them or also to the organisation that they operate for, specifically where we start to talk about internal fraud as well. The one thing we can take away is we can never prevent all fraud, but with effective controls and awareness, we can significantly reduce it. And today we're going to touch on some of the ways in which we can learn how to shut the front door on the fraudsters. Next slide, please.
Oh, hi, can I help?
Hot chocolate.
What's the name?
Joelle.
What was the name?
Alex.
Alex. There you go, Johnny.
Cheers.
If you like our Facebook page, we give you a free hot drink and a free pastry.
We have a new like for Damien. We have a new like for Damien.
Hey, Carly, are you standing by?
Standing by. Hi there, can I help?
Yeah, I just liked your Facebook page.
Okay, I'll search Facebook
I'm
now.
searching Google.
Have a phone number.
I've got his email address.
Okay, Carly, are you ready for information on Damien?
Yep, I am.
Mother's maiden name is He banks with
Carly, this is the girl coming in now with the blue scarf.
What's the name? Nicholas.
Nicholas. His date of birth, 7th of May. She lives at 38A.
Just be a couple of seconds.
2 children at age 4 and 6. Previous address. She's got a photo.
Yep, got it. Damien, age 26 and a fitness instructor.
How do you know what that?
Where did you go to UCL? Martin went to South Thames College. Assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street.
How did you know?
That is... I don't use that.
Oh, well.
You know I'm a Christian as well.
Oh, yeah, we know everything about you, Martin. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Anna from Russia.
And Sal, I noted your comment in the chat. You're absolutely right. Nobody went for takeout coffee again. We've all been there. We've all been there. We've seen the opportunity, like our Facebook page, share celebrations online. One thing to take away from that video is fraud starts with you. It starts with you as an individual rather than the organisation. Fraud prevention starts with people, not technology. Fraudsters will often look to target you first, not the bank, the IT systems, the bank accounts. And the reason for that is because impersonating you as an individual is the easiest thing for them to be able to do. Where we are in the 21st century, data that's available online, the information that we share, whether that's professionally on systems such as LinkedIn, or our local social media profiles, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok for those that are young enough to use TikTok. We share lots and lots of information. And with that, that's easily accessible by fraudsters, and something that they will look to use to impersonate you in their efforts to commit fraud. How can we tackle this? Protecting your data is key. Criminals might impersonate you to request payments. They might attempt to use your login details or your email address or personal information when contacting the bank. And compromised passwords allow criminals to steal personal data and access the union funds. I know if anybody's like me, remembering passwords is a real challenge. However, ensuring that we don't write those passwords down will massively help us prevent fraud in the future. So never share login details or authentication codes with anyone. Be cautious what you post online, especially on social media. Use strong and unique passwords to enable multi-factor authentication. And what do we mean by multi-factor authentication? That could be that you log in and then have to authenticate using a mobile device. That could be that we use facial ID or fingerprint recognition. That multi-factor authentication hugely protects you from an online presence perspective. Report unusual account activity immediately to the bank and law enforcement, and we'll talk more about that later. And treat unexpected contact claiming to be from the bank, a member, or a supplier with caution. And that's not to say that every contact that you will get will be a fraudster, but it's taking that moment to reflect and to verify to yourself that you're comfortable with the person that you're speaking to. Next slide, please.
What is remote banking?
We'll now talk about remote banking fraud. So we can go with the video.
What is remote banking fraud? Remote banking fraud is when criminals gain access to your personal bank details and passwords in order to steal money directly from your account. Criminals may approach you claiming to be from a trusted organisation.
Dear customer, as part of our security measures, customers must complete an online form immediately. Click on the following link. Sincerely, Security Online, Accounts Department.
But it's a remote banking scam, and a criminal is about to get their hands on your money. Always be suspicious of emails and messages asking you to click on a link to provide information. Criminals may also try to trick you into sharing your information by phone.
Good morning, this is your internet provider. I'm calling you about a problem with your broadband. I just need remote access to your computer so I can check your broadband speed.
Giving criminals remote access to your computer and allowing them to download software enables them to steal your personal details and access your account. Never respond to a cold call requesting access to your computer.
Thank you. We'll have all seen these. We'll all seen them, heard about them, experienced them in some cases. And this is very much where a fraudster will look to gain access to your online banking, your telephone banking, mobile apps. And they do so through things like fraudulent emails and social engineering. And we talk about phishing emails. And phishing emails is a common term within financial crime, but what does it actually mean? And effectively, it's a fraudster that's sending you an email to attempt to impersonate somebody else to gain information from you. Predominantly, that can be to get you to click on a link and complete an online form with your information. But it can also be asking for information to be responded to via an email as well. Impersonation calls. We've just seen some examples of those. I'm calling from your bank. I'm calling from the police. That level of authority and their attempts to be able to enhance that authority over upon you enables people or drives people to release information to them because they believe that they're calling from a place of legitimacy and a place of authority, and you feel secure in disclosing that information. Remember those key principles. The bank will never ask you to disclose things like passwords and login details, and neither will the police. Malware. malware is really key. And this is whereby we talk about large emails and large downloadable files, as Anna has already talked about, and clicking on links that we don't recognize. And principally, all we need to remember is in clicking those links and downloading those files, they can infect our computer. And when we infect our computer, that allows vulnerabilities to be utilized to gain access to information, data, and money. And finally, stolen login details. And I talked about that a moment ago around not writing your login details down, trying not to remember, not to write your passwords down, try and use passphrases instead of passwords. Enables them to be effectively reduces that risk of them being stolen. And we've talked about some of these already, but to the right-hand side, those examples again. I'm calling from your bank, your account is at risk. Fake bank phone numbers, emails with urgent payment requests on, requests to test an account, and fraudsters coaching staff to override security. And one of the key things to take away from that is the urgency and the importance. And many fraudsters will look to utilize that urgency and importance to pressurize you into doing something that ordinarily you wouldn't ordinarily do. And that can be things like your account is at risk to make you worry and to panic, but also to try and get you to execute at speed with things like urgent payments. How can you protect yourself against remote banking fraud? The bank will never ask you to transfer money to a safe account. We will never ask you for full passwords, PINs, or authentication codes. We're never asked to take control of your device. Remember to always verify payment requests using a known and trusted number. Use dual authority payments, allowing independence and the time to stop and think. And myself and Richard have talked about this recently around our banking rules and what our rules will be. Remember that dual authority, that two-person authority when instructing things like payments or changes to accounts. And slow down. Urgency is a red flag and something that we should never forget. Next slide. Now we'll talk about invoice fraud. And there's a difference and a nuance between invoice fraud and banking fraud. And we've touched upon it already. But what is invoice fraud? Invoice fraud occurs where a criminal sends a fake invoice to you, ordinarily via email. They intercept or alter genuine supplier invoices, or they request for you to update bank details. And this is prevalent within the industry at the moment. It hit a number of institutions hard within 2025, and we continue to see that as we move through 26 as well. Examples are things like fake emails from known suppliers. Please note our bank details have changed. Fake invoices that look really convincing, and compromised email accounts sending out fraudulent instructions. And I won't get into the technicalities as to how this happens, but there's a number of ways in which they will do that. They will either utilize false or fake email addresses, where you can see changes in things like the email address itself that makes it sound like they're from that organization, or where we've talked about login interception and how they gain access to people's online banking. The same can happen for emails as well. So they gain access to the genuine email address and then send emails to you in order to intercept payments. How can you protect yourself against it? Confirm bank detail changes by phone using a number that you already trust. In today's day and age, we all act with speed. We're all really busy. We've all got lots of things to do. But picking up that phone and speaking to somebody that you know is genuine to confirm whether or not the request that's been made is genuine takes 2 minutes. Check email addresses carefully. So .co.uk versus .org. A 1 instead of an I. The subtle changes in email addresses can be an identifier for where somebody is trying to defraud you or convince you to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Flag unusual or new suppliers for extra verification, and have that 2-eye check. Talk about the requests that are coming through. Talk about what's happening. Have that opportunity to stop and to think. And use that second pair of eyes to check payments. We'll move on to check fraud. Check fraud, again, is really prevalent in the industry. Fraudsters over a number of years have gone to really technical methods to try and convince individuals to make payments or to commit unauthorised fraud. What we've seen over the last 18 months to 2 years is fraudsters going back to basics. And one of those basics is check fraud. It's been with us for tens of years and is still prevalent in the market today. And check fraud occurs when criminals steal a check, they alter a check, they forge a check, or they create a completely counterfeit check in itself. Examples of this is things like check theft. So physical checks that are stolen from your post rooms, offices, mailboxes. It's even easier if these checks are pre-signed. And one of our top tips we'll cover in a moment will be to not pre-sign those checks. Check alteration, so changing a payee name or an amount on a check. Forging signatures, and criminals will attempt to intimidate authorised signatories. And again, we talk about access to online data. Companies House is a perfect source of obtaining people's signatures, and they will look to utilise those to forge your signatures again in the future. And finally, counterfeit checks. Entirely fabricated checks designed to look legitimate. From an industry perspective, counterfeit checks are less prevalent, but check theft is absolutely prevalent in our industry, and the stealing of checks, because we allow fraudsters the opportunity, is what drives the check fraud at present. Next slide, please. Our top tips. Keep checkbooks locked away. Where possible, have that two-person authority to gain access to a checkbook if you have that two-to-sign mandate in place. Please don't pre-sign checks. Pre-signing checks is giving people the keys to the castle, and if inevitably they get your checkbook, it's already signed, they fill the payee name out and the amount, and it's free money. Don't leave any gaps before or after the numbers in the amount box, making sure you draw a line after you've written the payee name, the amount in words, the numbers, etc. Review checkbooks regularly. Look for unused checks, look for uncashed checks. Contact your bank, have that general hygiene and that governance to ensure that we're keeping on top of our checkbooks. And use online banking where possible. Moving away from checks and enabling faster payment methods such as chaps or faster payments has greater security than what checks have done. So where possible, move to an online banking mandate. Next slide, please. Finally, we talk about internal fraud. And internal fraud is always a sticky subject for most people. It's not something we like talking about. We don't like to admit that the people that we work with might look to commit fraud or defraud us in the future. But internal fraud is where an employee, a volunteer, a contractor, or an official abuses their position to benefit themselves or the organisation that they work for, if that's a third-party organisation. We talk about internal fraud in the same way of that fraud triangle that we've talked about previously. The opportunity of our weak controls, the pressure of things like financial difficulties, and the rationalisation. I'll pay it back, they won't notice, I deserve it because I didn't get a bonus this year. Examples are things like payments to themselves, friends, or family. It's not just payment to themselves. Internal fraudsters will look to utilise a network of individuals to try and circumvent controls and hide their illicit activity. The misuse of an expenses policy. The misuse or theft of data is really prevalent. It's not just about the money, it's about the data as well. And with that data, they can look to sell that on to fraudsters who then go and use that to commit fraud in the future. Creating fake suppliers and fake invoices, and using their access to approve unauthorised payments. Next. How can you protect yourself against internal fraud? Separation of duties or segregation of duty is key. No one person that controls a process from end to end, whether that be changes to accounts, whether that be payments. Having that segregation of duty and more than one individual involved will help to prevent internal fraud. A regular audit and review of transactions, tick back those bank statements, look back at the activity that's taking place, and have that monitoring and governance in place. Remove access immediately when staff leaves. Have a really tight joiner, mover, and leaver process. And where possible, regularly review the access that you have available and identify whether or not the access that individuals have are still appropriate to their role. Challenge unusual behaviour. Build that psychological security within your institutions to be able to challenge unusual behaviour and do so in the right way. And finally, clear reporting channels for any concerns. And larger organisations will deal with this in things like whistleblowing procedures, etc. How to report fraud. So those that are Unity customers, you can call us immediately on our 0800 number. You can email us at fraud@unity.co.uk. And many financial institutions have very similar reporting methods to this. And as an organisation, we always recommend to file a report with Reporter Fraud. Those that have been exposed to fraud previously may have known this as Action Fraud. This is the new service that's been offered by the UK government around Reporter Fraud, on that link that's available there. If your business is based in Scotland, you can contact Police Scotland on 101, and where possible, obtain a crime reference number. For law enforcement inquiries, we will engage with law enforcement as an industry, and we will look to bring prosecution to offenders where possible. Finally, for me, the key takeaways from today. Stop. Take a moment to stop and think before making a payment or sharing any information. Challenge, whether it could be fake. Verify requests independently using trusted contact details. And finally, protect. Report suspicious activity immediately to law enforcement or your banking provider. That's it from me, Anna. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll hand over to Richard in a second, but I just want to remind everyone that we are keeping some time for questions. We've already had a couple posted, but do put any questions in the Q&A panel for Matt and Richard. I've actually jotted down a few as well that I want to come back to, of things I noticed during the presentation. So now we're going to hand over to Richard Rose, who I think I mentioned earlier is the Union Relationship Manager at Unity Trust Bank, and he's going to talk us through the Unity Research Panel. So Richard, over to you.
Yeah, cheers, Anna. Thanks for that, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Rose. I'm one of 3 trade union relationship managers at Unity, and I'm going to briefly talk to you today about the Unity Research Panel. This is where we'd like to hear from you, a chance to share your feedback on a range of topics, from products and services to future developments. Now, I've been reliably informed by our marketing team that it's not an onerous task. We won't take up hours of your time. So if you're interested, take out your phone, simply scan the QR code, which will be available after the presentation, and answer the 4 or 5 questions to register your interest. Then leave the rest to us. We'll be in touch. As the slide states, your opinion does make a difference to us at Unity. Thank you. Next slide, please. I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce the rest of the trade union team. My 2 colleagues there, Gareth Einon and Claire Mansfield. Again, our contact details are available with our telephone numbers, and these will be shared with you at the end of the presentation. But whilst I'm here, I'd also like to take this opportunity to highlight the Union Hub section on our trade union website. Can be found at www.unity.co.uk/union-hub. Now, if you get 5 minutes, please do take time. Just go on the website, have a look at the Union Hub. There is a plethora of information on this website under the Union Hub section. You'll find all the useful forms that you'll need to operate your bank accounts. You'll find information on how to add signatories and remove signatories from your bank accounts. And there's even a section, a tutorial section on the website where it's a short series of videos explaining how to achieve simple tasks when contacting the bank. So if you get a chance, please take 5 minutes to have a look at the section on the website. I'm sure you'll find something of interest there. And last but not least, our Unity Experience team, our dedicated team back in our Birmingham office, they'd love to hear from you. If you have anything that you want to discuss with them, anything you need to know about your account, please then just give them a call on the dedicated trade union number 0345 245 0020. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And I think now we're going to take a look at what you and the audience have been saying, and addressing some of the questions that you've posted and some of the points that I've jotted down from what I've seen raised in the chat, and things I think that are, going to be important for everyone on the webinar. So something that sort of really jumped out at me was that, Matt, you mentioned the fraudsters are going back to basics, that this doesn't have to be something that's really sort of highly sophisticated and highly complicated. It can be something using paper. So I think that's something we should all be aware of. I've also got a bit of a question for the audience. Who found the first video that we watched, the one in the coffee shop? Who found that surprising or shocking in any way? You can post in the chat your thoughts on that. I know we had one viewer already who said, no one's ever going to buy a takeaway coffee again, which I think is, it is a reaction to that. But what did people think of that video? I was quite shocked. I'll be quite open. I'll hold my hands up. I was shocked by it. Here we go. People are giving us their thoughts. Shocking and intrusive. Yes, I would agree. So while people are posting their thoughts, Matt, Richards, Martin, how common is that? How common is something like that happening where you might buy, go for takeaway coffee as the example? How often does that happen?
It's a really good question, Anna. And what I'm not here to do is to scare the audience in any way. So anybody that's taking that from the video, I apologise. It happens really frequently. Now, one of the things that I'll caveat that with is the reason why that happens frequently. 98% of the time, organizations will do that for things like marketing preferences, how to tailor things towards you, that what their customer base looks like, etc. So they will utilize things like Facebook to identify age, and actually what's their age demographic of their company, what age demographic interacts with them, who buys from them, and that helps them grow as an organization moving forwards. So that data is used for legitimate purposes, but it can also be used for illegitimate purposes as well. So for me, it's very much calling out, Anna, that information is there to be used, whether you want to use that legitimately or not, and kind of calling out that the access to that information, the availability of that information is really quite prevalent, and things like security settings and privacy settings really does help build that in. I know on some platforms now, you have the ability to not put your full date of birth in, so you can say the month or the year that you were born. Again, that still gives access to information, but it helps restrict that and make it harder for those individuals that want to use it for illegitimate purposes.
Thanks, Matt. That's really helpful. We've just had someone post in the chat that they say when they're asked at a coffee shop what their name is, that they write on the cup, their answer is Cleopatra, Queen of the Desert, which sends the message to anyone listening in, basically what they want to say. I have never known of a coffee shop challenge the name you give them. So, if it's just to identify your coffee, bring it on. Okay. So you mentioned in one of your sections earlier about passphrases, and this was also mentioned in the chat by one of the viewers. Imagine that we don't know what passphrase means. Can you explain that a bit? And why are they more important or more helpful? Not important. Why are they more helpful than using a password?
Absolutely. So this very much centres, Anna, around more information security and data security than it does around financial crime. But absolutely, let's talk about it. So what do we mean by a password? A password is normally built up by a word or a series of words, characters, numbers. A passphrase differs from that slightly, as it can utilize a number of words or a sentence rather than a single word in itself. Now, we won't talk about password hackers and how all of those wonderful tools work, but it's much more difficult to be able to crack a passphrase, as in a series of words or a sentence, than it is to utilize a single word in itself. We can strengthen that even further by whereby we are using a series of multiple words, replacing numbers for letters or characters. So replacing an A for the at symbol or a number 1 for an L or an I can help really segment those passphrases and make them stronger as well.
That's great advice. Thanks for that, Matt. I guess another obvious one is the S for the dollar sign, the E for the pound sign. There's lots of examples that we can use there. Okay. You also mentioned, so no, sorry, it was mentioned in the chat, this, I don't think this came up in your presentation, that fraudsters, someone suggested that they align pay dates and associations. I wanted to know what that is. What does it mean, the alignment between pay dates and associations? Like, what is it, and how can we mitigate against that?
Yeah. So how I read from that, I know, and it may differ from organisation to organisation, but pay dates. So fraudsters will look to target you at your weakest moment. And that weakest moment for you as an organisation might be when you're looking to make lots of payments. So if you have a date in the month where you make all of your payments, or you've got your payroll, etc., you're incredibly busy. There's lots of things going on. If I slip a fraudulent payment in, you're probably be less likely to notice it in the hundreds of payments that you're making on that day than on any other day where you might only be making 3 or 4 payments. So where we talked about previously the fraud triangle and that bottom corner looking at that opportunity, it's the exploitation of that opportunity. So your controls, your capacity, and utilizing that to say, actually, I think I might have a weakness today. And that could be on periods of the month, that could be on periods of the day, whether it's the start of the day, the end of the day. It could be seasonal. So if you look at things like New Year, you look at things like Christmas, things like end of tax year, where you may be making more frequent payments, utilizing that and understanding that organizations may be busier and trying to put payments through at that point, you're more likely to try and get something through.
Thanks, Matt. That's great. And while we're talking, just referring back to the previous question about pass phrases and passwords, someone's just posted in the chat saying, does anyone use the generate strong passwords function on a digital device? So I guess this is a question for the audience as much as it is for our panel. Yes, people are saying they do. Yeah, that is heartening to see. I guess, I mean, I do. I think lots of people do. I was wondering, though, if you've got more than one person accessing the account, like when you said you have multiple signatories, how that might work if you've got 2 different devices. People don't often share phones. So how might that work in practice?
Yes, and that covers onto a brilliant point, Alice. Thank you. One thing that I'll have a shameless plug out for here is please don't share login details. So each individual that's associated to an account should have their own login details. Never share them for various reasons, but please never share login details. Nothing wrong from a device perspective, but you're logging in individually. The utilization of automatically generated passwords is fantastic. It's really, really strong. But what we have to remember from that is we need to have a really strong framework that sits behind it. So what we need to remember is to not write those passwords down, because the password could be really strong, but if we write it down, it's then weak again because somebody could gain access to it. Similarly, making sure that we don't fall vulnerable to malware, whereby we could download something onto our computer that could gain access to that password, is also really key as well. So absolutely utilize the online password generators. They produce really, really strong passwords, but make sure that we've still got that framework in place to give us that coverage.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, I'm going to turn to some of the questions that have been posted for us. Checkbooks. You did a little section on the use of checkbooks, and one of our viewers has said they are a branch treasurer. They don't use checks anymore, but they are wondering whether they still have the checkbook, which they realise is a risk, but they were advised to just avoid using checks altogether in the future. Perhaps we can discuss that a bit more. The use of checks, people do still have the function to. What would perhaps be your guidance about moving forward with that?
Yeah, so check usage and functionality is there in the industry. The one thing I would say is if it was completely insecure and no financial institution liked it, it would be removed, but it hasn't. So we shouldn't be scared of utilizing checks. It's making sure, again, we've got that framework that sits behind it. Where we talk about we've moved away from checks, we've still got the checkbook, making sure we've got that really good governance of cancelling those checks, shredding the checkbooks, etc. is really key. The migration over away from checks, it is something that's happening within the payments industry today. Similar to, unfortunately, as we see with cash as well, the digital footprint, the digital payments is very much where organisations and the financial services industry is moving towards. Something that I recommend from a financial crime perspective. I note somebody in the chat also talks about biometric and the utilisation of biometric data. And if we want to delve a little bit more into that, we can, but we wouldn't be able to utilise biometric data if we weren't digital. So it's not saying to people you must move away from checkbooks. It's saying that actually you may find there's benefits in moving away and using digital channels instead.
Can I just add on that?
Yes,
sorry,
go for it.
Can I just add that the comment in the chat around identifying that they have a checkbook that they no longer wish to use, if they wish to contact us in Birmingham or log on to internet banking, they can place a stop on the book if they've got no interest in using that book, and then obviously they can securely destroy the checks at their leisure. That way, then it's double safeguarding them against any fraudulent checks being presented on the account.
That's excellent advice. Thank you, Richard. The next question, it will give Matt and Richard a little bit of a break. I'm going to put it to Martin. So we've had a question about bank mandates. And so first of all, I'm going to ask you to explain what we mean by a bank mandate, but the context of the question is we've got a branch treasurer is trying to work out who the signatories are on the account for the branch that they are now the treasurer for, and that they didn't realise that only the key contact can ask for that mandate. It took a while for their details to be updated, etc., etc. These things have a bit of a process. So can we talk a bit about what we mean by a bank mandate and why sometimes it's awkward to see who has access, what people can do in this situation?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Tom, for the question. So I'm Martin Barrett. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Unity Trust Bank, and to my right is Catherine Douglas, who's Chief Customer Officer as well, and we work with Richard and Matt. Tom, to your question, a bank mandate, you may know what a bank mandate is, but for everybody's benefit, it's essentially a customer's instruction to the bank as to how the bank will deal with them. So it will say, these are the people who are in charge of my bank accounts. These are the people who can make payments. These are the people who can sign to approve these payments. And these are the people who are on the bank account but can't necessarily make payments. So it isn't meant to be complicated. It can appear complicated, I totally appreciate. But it's basically a security measure for customers. So it's the customer's way of making sure that they control who in their organisation, in this case a union, has authority to do the customer's business over the bank accounts that you have, in this case with Unity Trust Bank. Now, our bank account process has elements of complexity. It has, and I think I talked on the last of these sessions, caused some frustration for customers, and we do appreciate that. We've invested very heavily last year, this year, and into next year as well on improving our internet banking offering. So Richard's already talked about the changes that we've put onto our website in order to be able to help all of our customers, but in particular, I really would encourage you to listen to Richard's good advice there. The Union Hub on the website has got lots more instructions and helpful guides and videos as to what these things mean and what they mean for you in your day-to-day banking. We are also making more of the services online as well, not online and only online, but offering the online service for you to be able to do some of these simple things yourself. So where you have got the authority on a bank mandate, you will, as this year continues, start to be able to add users, remove users, and edit users, which has previously been a paper-based process and something where really customers have had to chase us for updates, and we want to be able to respond to that by giving a better online offering as well. As I say, that's as well, that's not instead of, so you can still do all the things that Richard's already said. You can still talk to us on the telephone, you can still contact us in other means, and you can still talk to your relationship managers. I would suggest, I think it was Tom who raised the query. Perhaps, Tom, if there's anything specific that we can help you with, I think when you get the details that come through after this session, it'll have the details of our telephone number and also Richard and the rest of the team. If there's anything specific we can help with for you, then we'll be very happy to do that.
Thanks, Martin. And Tom's just added onto the chat. It would be brilliant to be able to see, add and remove users using online banking. So I think it's a really great feature.
It will. And what we're not looking to do is completely overwhelm customers and ourselves, to be honest with you. So we're going to do this in stages. So we're not going to launch all the functionality on one day. We're going to do it bit by bit. But hooray is definitely the word that we're using here as well. So good things are coming. Thank you.
Yeah, I bet. And while I've got you, Martin, perhaps this is another question for you as well. Someone's asked if people can have personal accounts with Unity Trust Bank. Can they?
I'm afraid not.
Okay.
I'm afraid we are a business and commercial bank only. We don't have the facilities for retail banking. Maybe one day, but not in the meantime, I'm afraid.
Perhaps we can add it to the list of long term. Short term, medium. It's down. It's on the roadmap.
Yeah, we're all together. In fact, we've got the entire Unity Trust Bank executive team in a room over the other side of the corridor over there, and our day tomorrow is looking very much for the future 10 years or so. So lots of fun things for us to do in the future.
Amazing. Okay, we've also been asked a bit about biometrics, which many of us will be familiar with, especially if we've done banking on our phones. My understanding of biometrics is face recognition or fingerprint recognition. The viewer has said they don't know how biometrics would work for businesses or companies, or I guess multi signatory accounts. Can you talk a bit about that, please? How it might work, whether it's something that you've got available with your accounts?
Absolutely. So I'll cover the latter first, Anna, and then kind of go into the former. Biometric data is something that we're looking to utilise, and is on our roadmap for implementation as we move through the coming years. In relation to what is biometric, how does it work? You're absolutely right. Facial recognition, fingerprint recognition. Some institutions will use iris recognition and will utilise the eye to try and identify individuals. Really strong from an identification perspective, much stronger than things like passwords, etc., and pins that we've seen in the industry for a number of years. Up and coming AI. AI is developing, artificial intelligence is developing at a rate of knots, and something called deep fakes in relation to things like facial biometrics is something that's a real challenge for the industry at the moment. A number of the third-party suppliers that offer these solutions have some really strong controls in place, but we are absolutely seeing a battle across the industry at the moment between the utilisation of artificial intelligence for illicit purposes and the utilisation of biometric as well. However, biometric doesn't just stop on what you see as an end user perspective. We have lots of controls in the background as an organisation for looking at biometric data as well. And one of those things that I'll touch upon is something called behavioural biometrics. And this is how you interact with an account. So if you log onto your account via online banking, some institutions will look to identify how you interact. So how you type, how you move your mouse, what screens you go onto, the times, the dates that you utilize online banking. And that will start to form a profile for you as an individual. And from that, we can identify what's usual or what's unusual for you. And to bring that to life a little bit, if Richard goes onto online banking on a Tuesday morning, and it's always a Tuesday morning that Richard goes on and he authorises the payments for that week. When he does so, he types in lowercase, not uppercase. And Richard's relatively fast on online banking. He's used it for a number of years. He knows where he's going on the screens. If we have a behavioural biometric profile for Richard, and then we see a log on at 3 a.m. on a Friday morning, and we don't go to authorise the payments, we go and look at personal information first, and actually we type in capital letters instead of lowercase, and we're moving quite slow because we don't necessarily understand the system. What that will do in the background is it will look at what's usual for Richard and what's unusual for Richard. And it will identify that to the bank to say, actually, we think this might be suspicious, for us to have a look at that in a little bit more detail. Now, that's a little bit technical as to how behavioural biometrics work and how biometrics work as a whole. But where we talk about sharing login details, that's one of the reasons why it's vitally important that we don't share our login details. Because I will interact with online banking differently to how you would, Anna, differently to how Richard or Martin may utilise that as well. And by doing so, it weakens our control. So ensuring that we keep up with the basics and the principles of what our banking rules are is vitally important for lots of different reasons. I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour, Anna.
It absolutely does, and really interesting to hear about behavioural biometrics. Yeah, that is, we're creatures of habit, so I think most of us navigate apps or navigate websites in a very typical pattern for us. So that's really interesting that you're this is something that we will start to add to security, actually, in many ways. I'm just wondering what would happen if someone had sort of almost been practicing and then they got really fast at navigating the app. It would maybe set off an alert, but in the long run, I suppose it's a good thing that they're getting more confident with it. Okay, we've I'm going to get you all to sort of wrap up shortly, because I'm sure there's lots you want to say before the end, but I want to put one final question to you all as well that's sort of been referenced throughout the chat. You also mentioned, you use this phrase, which I think is great, is financial hygiene. And you mentioned it in relation to checkbooks and sort of not having, for example, signed checks like hanging around. What are other things that we can all do that are good for financial hygiene, that will aid against fraud and fraudulent activity? But what are other general practices in financial hygiene that we should all be doing? Doesn't just have to be Matt, can be anyone.
Matt, can I take a couple there with regards to checkbooks? Firstly, if you're issuing checks, please make sure you check your check back, the stub back to the statement, and the check went through for the correct amount to your check stub. Also, if you have a checkbook, a fraudster, if you have a checkbook and there are a number of unused checks in your checkbook. The fraudster isn't likely to take the next available check in the book. So if you have a book of 50 checks or 25 checks and you've only used 5, you may want to go through your book to make sure a fraudster hasn't removed a check towards the back of the book that they will later present. So there's just a couple of hygiene factors around checks. Unfortunately, we do see check fraud at Unity. We are not immune. We see check fraud within the trade union sector, unfortunately. So there are a couple of hygiene factors that I always point out to the branch treasurers when I go out and do any sort of training or sessions. Always make sure the checks go through for the correct amount and tick them back off to your statement. And please go through your checkbook to make sure checks haven't been removed. Thank you.
That's really excellent. Thank you. A viewer has just added avoid using public Wi-Fi, which I think can be a case in all of us, whether it's personal banking or union branch banking. That's always going to be important, isn't it? What other financial hygiene practices can we all be doing?
Yeah, for me, again, a very unapologetic plug. We've talked about mandates already. Ensuring that mandate is up to date is vitally important. Whether that be if we've taken a signature from you, but we know that that signature is 15 years old, let's get that updated for you. Let's make sure we've got the correct contact details, your key contact is up to date, etc. Not only does that give us the ability to be able to, as Richard said, tick back. And from our controls, if we're reviewing transactions, we can understand who has authority and who doesn't. But also, if we suspect that there may be fraudulent activity on an account, time is of the essence. So we want to be able to contact somebody quickly and easily. And if key contact details aren't up to date, it makes it increasingly difficult for us to be able to do so, and then starts to impact that customer journey because we have to start cancelling payments, we have to start delaying payments. It just slows everybody down from a business perspective. We don't want to do that. We want it to be quick. We want it to be succinct. Having those up-to-date mandates, those up-to-date contact details makes everyone's life easier.
That's excellent. Thank you, Matt. Did you want to add anything before we wrap, Martin?
I will do. Just a big thank you from myself and Catherine and the rest of the Unity Trust executive team here. We put these things on in collaboration with the Trade Unions Congress because we're responding directly to our union customers' feedback, and I know that not everybody on the line will be customers, but we're committed to continuing to do these series of webinars. But the content is up to you. So the first of our webinars was on some specific functionality, how to use our website, how to bank with us at Unity. We're going to come back to some of those subjects, and it's good to see it wouldn't be a webinar about the bank if we didn't have something about mandates. So we'll be coming back to that. We're doing fraud today, or we have done fraud, and cyber is the one that we're lining up for early May, and details will be to follow later on that one as well. But thank you very much. Please do keep the ideas coming, and we would love to carry on doing these with you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everybody.
I can only echo what Martin has said. We always here at the TUC want to respond to what you want to see from us, especially when we're doing these partnership webinars like this one with Unity Trust Bank. I think we've all learned lots today, whether it's for a union bank account, a branch bank account, or indeed in personal banking. I've certainly got things I'm going to take away from this webinar. So thank you to Matt, Richard, Martin, and the rest of the team at Unity Trust Bank. You've been great. Thank you all for joining us, and I will see you online for another webinar very soon. Watch this space. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.